Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are strapping in for a really detailed look at failure.
Not just any failure either.
No, specifically the systemic, often kind of self-inflicted wounds that just destroy game development studios. You gave us this stack of sources, and they map out what they call, very starkly, the deadly signs of a doomed game studio.
That's right. And our mission for you today is to, cut through all the industry hype and really extract the specific red flags.
The real warnings.
The internal behaviors, the misaligned priorities, all the things that signal a collapse is coming long, long before any product ever hits a digital storefront.
Right.
It's so easy to assume a studio fails just because they made a bad game, but what the sources consistently show us is something far more structural.
It's a failure of incentives. That's what it comes down to. The core issue, according to all this material, is mistaking the narrative.
The pitch.
The promise, the investor deck.
Yeah.
Mistaking all of that for the actual product reality.
Yeah, precisely. And the initial hook here, the most fascinating and kind of tragic point, is just observing how often a studio essentially kills itself.
Through what?
Through a pure vanity and just terrible structural choices. Before the team has even finished the first, foundational line of usable code, we are looking at a unique form of self-sabotage.
That's celebrated in press releases.
Oh, absolutely. Right up until the doors close for good.
It's this corporate tragedy of prioritizing the appearance of success, which then actively starves the resources you need to create any actual tangible success. Okay, let's unpack this. We should start with the foundational problem, which the source material called the vanity trap. This is that phase where studios are focused almost entirely on their outward appearance, on image creation.
And that vanity, it begins with misplaced ambition and just extreme overpromising. The sources call it disrupting air without a game.
I found this section just fascinating. These studios, they launch these incredibly visible marketing campaigns, and they're claiming genre revolution or industry disruption before a single core mechanic has even been written. They're selling an idea, just an idea of a game that doesn't exist yet.
And that creates such a dangerous feedback loop. They celebrate this, hypothetical innovation while the code base is functionally empty. The core failure right out of the gate is mistaking these loud, high concept narratives for a viable product reality.
So they get validation for the pitch.
Exactly. And that reinforces the idea that the pitch is the product.
And if you really want to know what a company values, you just have to follow the money. This misplaced priority, it's immediately backed up by physical evidence in the workspace. Which brings us to Office First, Game Never.
The sources are so blunt here. I mean, they detail how the budget just evaporates rapidly on non-essential, purely aesthetic items.
Like what?
Designer furniture, custom neon logos, these high-end espresso bars. I think one source even mentions subsidized personal chefs. These are just costly expenditures designed almost entirely for appearances.
Or investor tours.
For investor tours, for recruitment videos,
But hold on, isn't some level of investment in the office? Isn't that necessary for morale?
Right.
And for recruitment, especially in such a competitive industry? How do the sources kind of differentiate that toxic vanity from just, a necessary early investment?
It really comes down to utility and priority. The critique isn't about having a nice office.
Okay.
It's about the structural priorities being completely upside down. The sources point out that the very same studio that splurged on that custom neon sign and all that designer seating, it often lacks the absolutely essential infrastructure.
So we're talking about things like...
We're talking about not having the necessary dev kits or a properly maintained version control system, or, and this is crucial, a senior technical director who can actually define the architecture of the game.
So the team is literally sitting on expensive chairs, sipping designer coffee, while they're fighting over unstable daily builds because version control is a total mess.
Exactly. The office becomes this incredibly expensive stage set.
Right.
But with no functional actors or even the proper props to do the job. And think about the psychological cost on the dev team. They're forced to use these substandard tools while they see the budget just wasted on shiny objects. It leads to this deep cynicism,
A reduced personal investment in the actual product.
Of course.
You're prioritizing the backdrop over the action. And this focus on easy external wins, it shows up so clearly in this next part. Swag before source control.
This is such a perfect metaphor for the failure of internal discipline. I mean, the easiest, most immediate, and highly visible win that management can get is producing narrative
Oh,
merchandise.
t-shirt.
T-shirts, stickers, collectible pins, all rolling off the press before functional code repositories are even created.
It's that instant gratification, isn't it?
Yeah.
Getting a physical logo on a t-shirt, it's a quick, tangible reward that takes zero developmental effort.
Yeah.
What kind of technical debt does that create?
Oh, massive amounts. The sources explain that this focus on merchandise, which is really just external branding, it means the team is not focusing on the boring, difficult, necessary foundation.
Right.
If you're not implementing rigorous source control early on, if you don't define your branching strategy, your build processes, your QA pipelines immediately, you are baking technical debt right into the foundation, and that debt will eventually just crush the team under its own complexity, long after those stickers have yellowed and peeled off.
And this whole vanity trap, it culminates in what the sources call trailers without controllers, the visual deception that's needed to sustain the hype.
This is where marketing truly overtakes development. Cinematic teams get the green light immediately. They render these dramatic camera sweeps over stunning concept art.
So they build these highly polished, pre-rendered marketing assets.
But if you were to ask them for a playable build, you'd find that no controller has ever actually guided a character block through a gray box corridor.
So the marketing assets, because they serve that external validation goal, getting more investment, more media buzz, they get prioritized and finished faster than the actual playable mechanics.
It is the ultimate diagnostic test. If the most polished asset a studio has is a 2-minute cinematic trailer, and they cannot produce a stable 30-second loop of gameplay,
They're in trouble.
the studio is prioritizing image over product, they are selling a fantasy, and that fantasy requires a massive expenditure of time and money that should be going into making the game actually feel fun.
So if we connect all these points, this entire vanity trap is symptomatic of rewarding external validation.
Right.
Investors, media attention, public image. Rewarding all of that over the difficult internal grind of actually creating something and iterating on it.
They crave the applause before they have even built the stage, and this external focus, it inevitably leads to structural rot internally.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because once that image is established, the internal structure that's designed to manage that image, it often starts to fail, catastrophically. This is the transition into what the sources call hypovercraft, where the processes themselves become the enemy of production.
And that structural decay, it begins with a fundamental failure in how they measure success.
Which takes us to funding brags replace player wins. The whole organizational focus just shifts to investor metrics. You see press releases trumpeting seed extensions, Series A funding.
9-figure valuation.
Exactly. And if you check their internal dashboards, what's missing?
Core player metrics. Where are the retention curves? Where are the daily active user projections? Where is the evidence of a vertical slice, that small, complete, polished section of the game that proves the core loop is fun and marketable?
It's just not there. It sounds like investor applause becomes the only metric that ever actually climbs.
And it's the easiest one to control if you're good at pitching. When funding acquisition is the primary goal, the incentive for the executive team is just to keep the narrative glowing, no matter what the product reality is. The entire organization starts to prioritize activities that secure capital over activities that actually solve problems.
And that internal incentive structure is then physically reflected in the organization chart itself, which it quickly devolves into a loaded hierarchy, more managers than makers.
This is maybe the most damning structural sign that the sources highlight. You look at the org chart and you just see the stacking of producers, associate producers, project managers, strategic initiative leads.
All against the people actually making the game.
The animators, the sound engineers, the programmers, the QA staff, yes.
And the source material highlights this ratio that's just,
Yeah.
it's truly toxic for creative production, sometimes hitting 3 managers to 1 maker. That level of administrative overhead seems completely unsustainable.
It creates instant decision paralysis. I mean, when you have 3 people managing one person's work, every single decision, no matter how small, has to loop through multiple meetings, multiple sign-offs, multiple viewpoints.
The implementation just stalls.
It stalls because administration balloons. Progress gets measured by meeting attendance, not by implemented code.
So how does the source explain why that specific 3-to-1 ratio is so toxic? Is it just the decision paralysis, or is it more about the administrative drag?
It's both, but the paralysis is worse. The core problem is what they call accountability diffusion. No single manager owns a specific outcome because too many people are involved in the process.
So when something goes wrong,
It's always someone else's fault. This creates a culture of inertia where the safest career move is to avoid making a final decision at all.
And this bloated, meeting-heavy structure.
Hmm.
It needs some kind of comforting narrative to justify its own existence, which leads us to slogans masquerade as culture.
The superficial culture. It looks fantastic on the surface. You've got posters screaming these rallying cries like, move fast and crush bugs, suggesting this agile, productive environment that's focused on shipping.
But the reality check hits you when you look under the hood, when you look at the tooling and the daily process.
The sources detail how project management software like Jira just rots, completely untouched. Sprints aren't actually measured, and stand-ups devolve into people just reading mission statements instead of identifying and solving impediments.
So the developers are burdened with the idea of productivity,
Yeah.
but they don't have the actual structure or authority to deliver it.
Exactly. So the only repeatable process they actually nail is printing new, motivating, rallying cries to wallpaper over the silence of stalled sprints. The image of getting work done completely replaces the actual work.
That is the synthesis of hypovercraft. When the corporate structure is focused on managing money and meetings and, morale through these superficial slogans rather than physically building a product.
The internal incentives inevitably reward inertia and image over actual production, which raises a really critical question. Who benefits when the entire system is designed to reward failure to launch?
And that leads us directly into the discussion of financial misalignment, which is captured perfectly by the ultimate consequence, vision without play.
The critical failure of incentive is right there in the phrase, salary wealth before equity value.
Okay, break that down.
We often see founders and executives pocketing these substantial executive paychecks, big bonuses, generous expense accounts, long before the studio generates a single dollar of revenue, or even gets a functional Steam page up.
This is the absolute separation of risk. The founder has completely de-risked their personal life using investor capital. They're essentially paying themselves market rate or even above for just the idea of running a studio.
And that completely removes the necessary incentive to weather the most difficult and painful phase of game development.
The final push to ship.
The final push, yeah. Which requires brutal focus and often a lot of personal sacrifice. If the founder gets rich purely by raising capital and maintaining appearances, why would they risk that stability on the uncertainty of actually launching a game?
They wouldn't. The financial rewards for starting the studio are perfectly engineered to outweigh the rewards for finishing it.
That's it. They are successful at the business of being a perpetually fundraising startup.
But they are guaranteed to fail at the business of shipping a complex product. They built the plane, got the money, then parachuted out with the cash.
So if we connect all these toxic patterns to the bigger picture, the sources offer a really simple, almost brutal truth. The solution is the direct reversal of every toxic sign we've discussed. The path to success is simple, yet fiercely difficult.
Which is,
Build the games first.
that's the counter strategy. And it starts by reclaiming the true meaning of the acronym MVP. The source material is so adamant that the minimum viable product has been hijacked.
And turned into a minimum vanity pitch?
Ex-
The successful studios, the ones that actually survive, they ruthlessly prototype core loops. They test for fun within weeks, not months or years.
And they invite brutal player feedback early.
Early and often.
Right.
And they iterate rapidly, usually in relative obscurity.
And hold back the hype. You let the press, the swag, the interior decorators,
Yeah.
all of that can wait. That focus should only happen after the game itself has proven it's worth talking about.
After the core experience is solidified, tested, and is demonstrably fun,
Yeah.
success demands absolute internal honesty. It means prioritizing the player experience over the investor presentation. It requires building an organization where programmers and animators are rewarded for measurable progress on the product, not just for their attendance in endless meetings or their ability to produce flashy concept art for the CEO's pitch deck.
So what does this all mean for you? I mean, whether you're developing a game, launching a startup, or running any complex project, the difference between a doomed operation and a successful one is often a choice.
Yeah.
It's the choice between focusing energy on looking innovative, that's the vanity trap, versus being innovative, actually building, testing, and iterating in the trenches.
And the source material suggests this powerful pattern where failure isn't a lack of talent or resources. It's an outcome of internal incentives being perfectly structured to reward corporate image and personal wealth acquisition instead of product completion.
So that structural failure becomes the most critical deliverable.
It does.
It truly changes how you view risk and reward in business. They didn't fail because the game was bad.
They failed because they were paid to fail.
Rah.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question for you to mull over. In any field, whether you are launching a new product, running a nonprofit, or managing a team, what are the subtle incentives you might be inadvertently creating that reward the appearance of progress?
The constant talk and meeting culture.
Right, that over the achievement of tangible, measurable, undeniable results. Where are your resources really going? To the espresso machine or to the source control?
Thank you for diving deep with us. We hope this analysis helps you spot the deadly signs of vanity and inertia in whatever you are building next.